Good afternoon and welcome to the Rotary Club of Kerrville. This time I'd like to ask everybody to check in on your social media, let everybody know where we're at. We're going to be talking about some piglets today and a pest in the Texas Hill Country and everywhere else we're at. And let them know we're solving that problem. And go ahead and silence your cell phones while you're doing it so everybody can have the attention they deserve for today's presentation. At this time, I'd like to invite a longtime Rotarian that we haven't seen for a while, and I'm glad you're back with us, Austin, to please come up and lead us in our invocation and pledge.
Would you pray with me? Gracious God, we thank you for this beautiful spring day. We are grateful to be alive and living in your creation. We're grateful for the opportunity to gather for fellowship, learning, and service. Our hearts are with the people of Ukraine and all those in the world who are in danger and suffering. We pray for peace and then for healing. Let us be good stewards of this club, of our time and our resources to make our community and our world a better place. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. Amen. And the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this month we're doing birthdays. We have 15 birthdays. Jackie Davis's birthday is actually today, but we have a number of people in the audience, Mr. Boudreau for one, whose birthday is today. So if your name is on the list, please remain standing. If it is not, you may have a seat. And we'll sing happy birthday to the April birthdays. We got, what, 2, 3, Jeff? How about that? Another year older and deeper in debt. So there we go. Happy birthday, April birthdays. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, April birthdays. Happy birthday to you. All right, let it go.
Thank you, George. Clint, you're making your way on up. So if you'd like to come introduce our speaker for the day, please.
Thank you very much, President Jeff. You know, in Texas today, unfortunately, there seem to be two kinds of land. Land where the feral hogs have already arrived and are doing significant damage, and land where they're about to arrive. And so the question is there anything that can be done about it? And fortunately, here in Kerr County, we have one of the leading experts in feral hog management. He was born in Houston, Texas, appropriately so. But his family moved into Roswell, New Mexico at an early age, and that's where he graduated from high school. He has a BS and master's degrees in wildlife management. He has served state and Native American governments as well as private landowners during his 24-year career. He's been the research coordinator for Texas Parks and Wildlife's Kerr wildlife management area since 2008, and is focused on intoxicants and delivery systems for wild pig control. He has spoken locally, nationally, and internationally on the subject. He is married with 2 children. Please make welcome Justin Foster, who will talk to us about the feral hog problem.
Thank you all. I'm glad to be here. Let's see, can I control that from here? We get it in presentation mode, or with that little icon right there. Just go up from that. That mess y'all's meeting up? Okay. All right. Well, think we're up and running now. Today, I kind of wanted to give you a quick overview presentation about wild pig research and the work that we do here locally out of the Kerrville Wildlife Management area and with our partners, U.S. federal government, some private groups, academic groups in Australia, things of that nature. But I wanted to go out on a limb here. You can imagine I'm probably not much of a financial guy, but I'm speaking to a bunch of business people, and I thought, well, let's try to relate this a little bit to your lives, and maybe you can have a little fun at my expense. And so, research is expensive. Wild pig research is expensive, and I asked the question: is it a good investment? So today we'll talk a little bit about the feral pig and some of the work we're doing. And you can decide for yourself by seeing some of the products that we've produced thus far. And hopefully you get to ask some questions from me. My background since 2008, 2009, I pretty narrow focus, and that is finding more efficient means to control the feral pig. And I want you to ask those questions if you came here to ask questions about toxicants and delivery systems. But I also kind of wanted to leave it up to you and let you direct the subject. You may have basic questions about feral pigs, and I'll do my best to answer them. So if you're going to make an investment, you got to have a good market. Well, here's some indicators of what the market is statewide for feral pigs. And if you see on these maps, these are county occurrences where feral pigs are documented to exist. And you can see the rapid change from 2004 to 2018. When I was part of tracking this, I can remember we were at a point where we were at 7 West Texas counties, and 2 of those were Hudspeth and Culberson. And I worked in Hudspeth and Culberson County. I know how little rainfall was there. And sure enough, we're down to El Paso County. These pigs are demonstrating they can live in places that folks didn't think they could do so. Moreover, it's often through human action. If we look at the domestication and fertilization of the wild pig worldwide, we're behind it all. We have pigs in lots of places because deep down inside, we like pigs. What's our global market looking like? Well, basically, since folks have been traveling the oceans, where man goes, so goes the pig. It is considered one of the world's worst 100 invasive species. Invasive certainly meaning that it establishes itself readily and that its population can grow very quickly. Here, that was more of a geographic distribution, but I did some literature review some time ago and just looking for solid evidence that showed populations were increasing. Yes, I'm making it a generalization here about Sus scrofa, which is Latin for the feral pig, the Eurasian wild boar, and hybrids thereof. But because of their nature, even in their native lands, we have issues, both Western and Eastern hemisphere. But make note that there's in both hemispheres and within polar latitudes, that's where we see the pigs establishing themselves and doing very well. And I assure you that if the southern tip of Argentina extended further towards Antarctica, there would ultimately be pigs there too. And this is not fear mongering. I mean, I don't mean to say that. Overhead, I'm specifically talking about costs of operation for us as a society, for taxpayers. Flying helicopters and shooting pigs is expensive. Those of you who are landowners understand how much time and effort it takes, materials, fuel, things of that nature to keep those populations at bay. Them being invasive, costs are going to increase.
Right now, the estimate is that we spend about 2.1 billion per year in the United States, and that's an estimate of damage and control. We can't put a cost or a value on things like wildlife habitat. It's very difficult. I can assure you that feral pigs are damaging wildlife habitat and directly impacting wildlife. Can't really put a value on human health. What do we say about that? Feral pigs can certainly be reservoirs for disease that can impact us. And if you don't believe so, ask somebody in Texas who's contracted brucellosis and the pain that they went through for the treatment of the situation. Could be worse than that. We talk about our agricultural markets. Our economy is super important to us. Go look at the values of a specific livestock market and relate that to a foreign animal disease getting into that livestock market. So pigs being a good vector for disease and very robust to disease, known to carry 45 or so diseases that could be detrimental to humans and or livestock. That is a great concern to us. Lastly, you could consider pigs as a potential vector as a bioterrorism threat. They can be moved readily. That's how they're spreading. They establish themselves well in new places. And so that is part of your federal government's concern about security and bioterrorism, things of that nature. What has the Kerrville invested? Well, since 2009, we said, you know, these feral pigs are really causing a problem for our constituents, our landowners, and for the wildlife and habitat that we're charged with managing, ensuring that it's there in perpetuity for generations to come. We have personnel that are dedicated in their time, their salaries, to actually do research on feral pigs now. We have equipment. We're using much of the same equipment that you would use. So we have experience with that. We're a resource for technical guidance. We have facilities. We have 311 acres at the Kerr management area. It's a one-of-a-kind facility that's dedicated to feral swine control research. And that's what we've been doing there for quite some time. We do a number of investigations, both captive and free range. Some of the products that we've produced, I can think of at least 13 manuscripts that have been documented in peer-reviewed journals that are there for scientists to use in the future as new questions are asked in trying to find new ways to control feral pigs. And we're very proud of that. We certainly develop new professionals. We have folks that have gotten master's degrees as part of our projects. Like I said, we talked to countless landowners offering technical guidance to for their questions and concerns and how to manage the feral pig on their property. We've even done some innovation. We've got a couple of products that are known worldwide now and are getting a lot of hits that relate to feral swine control and euthanasia. We have international partnerships that as we run with a bunch of folks that are doing research on feral pigs worldwide. So there's a flow of information there. Pesticide registries. With our work, it focuses on the active ingredient sodium nitrite. You've probably heard about it. It was in your bacon this morning. It was very likely in your ham. We have a lot of work and experience here at the Kerr with that and our partnerships, research partnerships with the federal government. A sodium nitrite based feral pig toxin was registered in Australia about 2 years ago. And we've done extensive work on that. And we're currently working with our partners for a registry of that product and delivery system with the US EPA. And then of course, leadership. We sit on a number of national task forces and steering committees, things of that nature regarding the feral pig and its impacts on North America. And there's you kind of a picture of what a toxic bait site and delivery system looks like. And with that, I think it's time to open it up for questions.
Two-part question.
Yes, sir.
Where did the feral pigs originate from and all migrate from? Was one spot? And two, when you say feral pigs, are you talking one breed or one species, or are you talking a bunch of different types of pigs and different kind of?
Yeah. No, it's a very fair question. So Europe, Asia is where the Eurasian wild boar, Sus scrofa, comes from. Okay. How did they become feral pigs? How did they move? Partly because of their cognitive abilities. Feral pigs are known to have been domesticated on 6 or 7 independently geographic and in time. So man domesticated them for his own purposes as a protein source, who knows, fats, things of that nature. How do they move? There's evidence that, and this one's the most interesting of all human movements of the pig, whether feral or domestic. How do they move? In Neo-Mesolithic times in Scandinavia, for hunting purposes, there is rock art and pictographs that indicate that these folks were moving the wild Eurasian boar from the mainland to islands for the purpose of hunting. And that's exactly why I said we have pigs, because deep down inside, we like them for lots of reasons. And so through oceanic exploration, for instance, you're a seafarer, I might come back to this island, I don't know. Let's dump some of our domestic pigs out. What is fertilization? That pig is domestic. Suddenly the forces of man are removed, and that is fertilization. Now all of a sudden that animal begins to change again without the influence of man. And that's how it occurs. We say feral pigs move at 80 miles an hour in trailers, and that's documented through genetic work. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
We had a ranch between Basin and Junction. We had feral hogs there.
Mhm.
Did we develop anything to sterilize these hogs?
There are multiple, let's see. There's at least one contraceptive out there, but it's not feasible. Okay, so there's lots of work being done on contraceptives for feral pigs. Part of the problem is that the body's immune system, if we're going to go through an oral delivery, that is feed this contraceptive, the body's defense mechanisms start with the saliva. And so developing something, you've got to protect it. We've gone through this with the development of toxicants as well. You got to protect it from the body, but then release it. And those are some of the issues. And so no, there's no registered contraceptive. I'm not even sure there's not one worldwide, but there's some promising work being done, and there's certainly a large segment of the scientific community working towards that through different angles. Yes, sir, back in the back.
The toxins, assuming in feed, if you feed pigs off of free choice, is that available to the public? Secondly, handling pigs, trapping them, moving them to a butcher plant or whatever, is that safe? And consumption of meat, is that safe?
Okay. All right. So I believe the first question you ask is there a toxin available to the public? The answer is yes and no. A few years back, the federal government, the US EPA registered North America, USA's first active ingredient for feral pig control. And that active ingredient is warfarin, AKA Coumadin, okay? Created quite a stir in Texas and the pig states. It is still not registered in any state, which is a requirement. Each state has its own purview over pesticides. So there are no registries of a product in any individual United state. We have no registry in what we're working on. What we do have is EPA has looked at sodium nitrite as a pig toxin through the work that our partnerships have done. And they've basically issued us permits to work out in free range. We came out of these controlled settings. We've worked in Australia, we've worked here in North America, and essentially they give us a ticket to the World Series and what we call an experimental use permit. And you go out and test this in the field. That's the World Series of pesticide registration. We're waiting on EPA to approve those toxins. The next question was about safe handling and movement. Is it safe to handle a feral pig? It is safe, but it requires some precaution, okay?
And the consumption of
It is safe, 165 degrees, I believe. There, you need to cook it well done. Okay, you don't want to eat it raw. Yes, ma'am.
Like the wild catching festivals in South now in rural areas like that, I would assume are frowned upon or they appreciate because they're catching.
It kind of depends where you come from. There's certainly good evidence out there that indirectly or directly that we move feral pigs on the landscape. And oftentimes, because they establish so readily, we may do so for our own benefit. And the monetary incentives, I think many of you know, there's considerable amount of money to be made, whether you're slaughtering a wild pig that was captured on opportunistically. It's expensive to make a campaign to catch it. But there's evidence in Tennessee that folks are moving pigs and in similar settings, and that ultimately caused a geographic spread of the pigs in their state. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, not from Texas, so well. Seeds are obligated to the same thing.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Very different.
Why can't an industry be developed that would harness those wild pigs?
It's a fair question. You get into a couple things, and that's why I said opportunistic capture. One of my bullets in there indicated that live capture costs about twice as much as lethal means. Okay, just on the capture part, and some of the estimates out there in terms of using something like a toxin be 1/80th the cost. Then you get into the pre-mortem and ante-mortem testing that our beef products go through. I'm not a beef man, okay, but the USDA has inspection requirements, and so it gets costly very quickly, and it's been attempted. Yes, sir.
Does some of those toxins that are for the pigs, that affect the whitetail?
It's a great question. And we've worked on that directly at Kerrville Wildlife Management Area. I did it myself. In terms of the concentration of an active ingredient and the sodium nitrite active ingredient, it's not practically different. That is, if a deer consumes that, it's going to die. Deer are a little bit less sensitive, and you might think, well, are you a madman? Are you guys madmen and mad women? White-tailed deer, most important species in the state socioeconomically. We've been thinking about that since day one, and that's exactly why we started down that road. You've got to have a delivery system to do that. You have to have a bait that is not so attractive. And so in that last picture I showed you there, that's all part of it. And we've been very successful in Texas and Alabama on these campaigns that are under the EPA microscope, and we are not killing white-tailed deer. We have had some black eyes. There's got to be somebody in this room that knows that we went to the World Series in 2018 in North Texas and we killed a couple hundred passerine birds. We've studied turkey vultures and we've studied everything we could think of, and we missed it. And we took a big black eye in 2018, and that's why we don't have a registry of that product. We've had to go back to the drawing board and alter the product, the concentration of the active ingredient, the technique to deliver it. And we're back. The EPA allowed us to go back to the World Series last summer in Texas and Alabama. Yes, sir.
I have heard that while sodium nitrite is an effective toxin to control wild pigs, and I understand you've done a lot of research on delivery, so that only the pigs eat it. What happens to the vultures who eat the pigs?
It's a great question. And yours truly did the work on turkey vultures. So I can tell you that the LD50, that's a science term for the sensitivity of the species. Turkey vultures, number one, are not near as sensitive to sodium nitrite as a feral pig or a white-tailed deer. They're not even in the same ballpark. Number two, the way that turkey vultures feed makes a difference. Sodium nitrite is a fast-acting product, but you've got to take it in rapidly. And that's not really how turkey vultures feed. So we have done quite a bit of work on that. The EPA has accepted that. And the other part of it is an intoxication by sodium nitrite is not known to have any long-term or latent effects, if you will. It doesn't bioaccumulate. It's a very unstable product, which has been part of the reason why it's been so hard to stabilize. And so that kind of surrounds that part of it. Yes, sir. Yeah. Okay. So gestation's 115 to 121 days. And if I had to get my napkin out, you know, they're not going to have 3 litters in a year. There's all kinds of things that drive that, but you might get 3 in 2 years. Average litters, probably in the neighborhood of 6, 7, but they can range drastically depending on the forage availability in the local area. Yes, sir. Okay, so organized hunts, as in groups of people, campaigns to go out and do that. Okay. I'm going to say no. I'm trying to make sure I understand your question appropriately. First of all, hunting or shooting pigs has just not been effective at reducing the trend. And every trend that I've shown you and every one that I could get for you, you know, populations are increasing and expanding in range. Generally in a hunt, if you will, without a helicopter or suppressed rifles over an ag field, you're going to shoot one. If you're really good, you might shoot 2 or 3 and the rest of them are gone and they've learned something from you. And that's the problem with shooting.
I've heard that rattlesnakes are stopping rattling now because the pigs are eating. Is that?
You know, I've heard that myself, And I think that kind of taps into some basic principles of microevolution, of which I'm not an expert. I mean, I can see where the questions come from, but I don't buy into it because I don't think that anybody's done any focused research. Microevolution does happen. I've seen examples of that. But I've stepped on quiet snakes in the fall, coyote hunting in New Mexico. And at that time, there wasn't any feral. So I just don't think that's been investigated. And it's very similar to the questions about elk and their bugle. Are we shooting the bugle out of the wild elk? I just don't know. Yes, sir.
Read recently, it's been a story, I believe it was, to tell a big Senate get rid of their populations, population. It's not organized, it wasn't successful.
I'm not sure about that specific case. I have looked into it over the years, and we're talking about bounties essentially. And so, you know, historically, when we look at bounties in wildlife management, they've not necessarily been effective at increasing the number of take and the number of effort, man effort, woman effort out in the field. That's kind of a general trend. The other problem is that it increases the chance for fraud, and that's been documented in some feral pig bounty campaigns. There's administrative overhead, but that is not to say that those bounties are not impetus for the harvest of a whole bunch of pigs. I mean, you're getting pigs off the landscape, but we got to get into things. I said, I'm not a financial guy and try to talk about it a little bit there. We got to go for return on investment, and all those associated costs are part of that. You bet. You bet. Thank you all for having me. I'll be around for a little bit.
Thank you, Justin, and thanks for a great presentation. It's anybody goes on anybody's land or sees it, the damage those things do is just unbelievable. A little bit of club business. We would next Wednesday at 11 o'clock, Charlie is going to be doing a new member orientation right here. So if you can come and make it and be here for it. If not, we can get you in next month, because I know that there's one that's not going to be available next week. Families in Rotary, keep Brian Bowers in your thoughts and prayers. As we talked about, he injured himself during spring break. He sent me a picture yesterday. He ripped his patellum tendon. And I don't know if y'all know what that is, but it is a horrible looking scar that he's going to have with all the stitches going down his leg. So he can't drive. He can't drive for at least another 4 weeks. So it's kind of hard for him right now. That's membership. We got a lot of members coming in. We have members bringing gifts. We continue to drive membership, and that's the goal. The more members, the more Rotarians, the more we can do, and the more things that we can do in the community. So bring a Rotarian, future Rotarian, bring a friend, bring somebody that wants to be a Rotarian, bring them next Friday morning at 8 o'clock to the Veterans Center at 411 Meadowview. Bring them for the Veterans Breakfast. Come on out, tell a war story, listen to war stories. It's a good time, a good celebration had by all. So it's the first responders golf tournament's coming up. Some very encouraging news from a very nice individual that never wants to be recognized. But he reached out and said, I'd like to sponsor the event at the title sponsor level, but $3,000 just isn't enough. So he donated more. So very nice thing. And he said, I don't want any recognition. I don't want my name said, and I definitely don't want a banner. So y'all can probably guess who I'm talking about right now. But that will be April the 25th, Monday at River Hill Country Club. 2 days later, right here in the gym, we are going to have our first responders recognition luncheon. It's always a fun day, great way to honor and recognize those first responders that have shined a little bit brighter than the other ones, or a little bit more polished, and get the recognition from their peers to receive the Rotarian Award. So, and that is all thanks to Mr. Wendling and his efforts and the First Responders Committee. Paul Harris. Christy, you said I had to embarrass Marta, but she wasn't gonna be here today, so I gave hers to her last week. But I do have one, if I can ask Mr. David Jones to come forward, please. T. David Jones, the one and only. Exactly.
Thanks, sir.
Paul Harris +7 for David Jones. Thank you, David. District raffle tickets. I wasn't going to say anything, but I want to bring it up. They used to be the cruise raffles. We have ordered our tickets. We don't know where they're at. Christie is working on it through the district level. Joe Kavanaugh is working on it through the district level. We're not the only club that does not have them. There will be matching Paul Harris fellow points for everything that's $100 or more. Will match Paul Harris fellow points. And it is going to be this year, not cruise tickets, but it's going to be Visa gift cards, kind of like we do for our main event that we do, but it's going to be district. So you have a chance of winning a really nice gift card that after Uncle Sam takes their cut, you might get $6.72 out of it. Not really. So once we get those, Mr. Wendling will be up here, happy as the club secretary, and gets to sell those. So tomorrow morning here at 6:40, the morning club meets. They're going to have the guest speaker tomorrow is Mindy Winley, Chief McCall, Chief Maloney, who's your fire chief and your police chief. But McCall's the chief of police and vice versa. Mindy's going to be talking about Prop A. She talked about it. We had a little bit of anyway, come if you'd like to hear what they have to say, what Mindy has to say about it. Kenneth O'Neill, the president of the Morning Club, reached out through Carol Holmes and said, we're having a hard time getting people to come listen to our speakers. So if anybody here would like to come tomorrow morning, 6:40 for breakfast, and then their presentation starts at 7. Mindy will also be speaking to us in a couple of weeks about the same thing. So you can get a double taste and get up extra early tomorrow morning if you'd like to. And Jeffrey, you have some visitors.
With reference to Prop A, I find myself with others on the PAC that's supporting that. So if you have any burning questions, I'll be glad to try to help answer them for you. Not complicated, as you already know, but it is interesting what people ask, and appropriately so. $45 million bond, you want to know what the impact is and why we need to do it. And God only knows we need to replace that building. Paula's There. When did you tell me? You keep telling me every week and I keep forgetting. November you're going?
No, we the end of May.
End of May. You ought to have some kind of a notice on the wall over there for me to remember that. Oh, yeah. You ought to stay here. It's nice. It was 86 yesterday, 84. Bill, Gabriel's with you today? Sure. Janelle, you have guests? Where's Janelle? You're still there.
He's
And
got
you can't make it next week, right? Okay. We're glad you sustained. That's great. And I'm gotta do it. I can't stand it, Betty. Betty Vernon's back with us today. Yep, absolutely. As you know, one of my favorite people, and I'm sure glad to see your smiling face. Anything else?
That is it, I believe.
One quick little accolade as well, actually two. I want to recognize two Rotarians for recent accomplishments. Ashley, would you stand up, please, ma'am? Phillips. You're blasted all over Facebook. You know that. Ashley has just started with Hill Country Telephone Company as one of their sales representatives. And as their Facebook posted last night, she likes the long walks on the beach. She likes to hunt and fish, hang out with their little son Colt and her husband when he's not playing golf. But congratulations on your new position. Good luck in your endeavor. So. David LeBron. You didn't know I was going to do it. That's kind of a wing thing since General Walter's not here. This is kind of the Rotarian of the Week thing that I'm winging. David, you were just recognized by SWBC and, well, not by them, but you are a CRMS, which stands for Can't Remember, never mind. It is a certified real estate mortgage, certified residential mortgage specialist. That's a mouthful. Just a couple of accomplishments that I've seen this week from some of our outstanding Rotarians that we have with us. So now with that, another outstanding part of being a Rotarian is wearing your pin every week and getting called out to get a nice bottle of Merlot from Becker Vineyards. Quincy Smith, she has it. All right, so our next meeting will be next Wednesday with the senior scientist, Dan Doherty from Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, Heart of the Hills Fisheries. So we'll go from piglets to fishies. So, yes, sir.
There are some handouts over here. I want my media calling
No, table. Perfect. So there's some handouts over on the table that Justin brought from Parks and Wildlife about pigs and pig annihilation. So with that, if there's no other club business, if you would, please rise and stand and join me in the four-way test. You know, the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Fair to all concerned. Build goodwill and better friendship. Be beneficial to all concerned.